Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan. Welcome back to the bunker. Today we're going to do a spoilercast for the first 3 episodes of the CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths, the first 3 of 5. We have a cliffhanger that we're left on until the middle of January. I'm going to get to see the beginning of Star Trek Picard, I think, before Crisis comes back. And there's a whole bunch to talk about here, of course, a whole lot to unpack. Fan service stuff, cameo stuff, story stuff, character things. There's stuff I love, there's stuff I hate, there's a lot of goofy, convoluted stuff, there's a lot of unnecessarily cheesy stuff, there's some really fun, cheesy stuff that I love despite and or because of its cheesiness. This is an absolute mixed bag, and it's going to be really difficult to decide where to start. I hope I don't miss anything I want to talk about, but if I do, I can bring it up on the next video. I'm going to do another one of these after the last 2 episodes, which are going to air on the same night. The Arrow episode and the Legends episode are going to air together kind of as a big 2-hour movie finale, which is cool. So anyway, I guess we'll just dive right in. A lot of the cameos that we had already heard about, we've seen already now, and the majority of them are indeed cameos. I said that a lot of these characters probably would only be on screen for like 40 seconds, and people were getting really excited about probably nothing, including myself, because there were a lot of characters from other continuities. I mean, it's really fun roping in all of these different versions of the DC Universe, different projects all together into one big multiverse, and there are some deep pulls, there's some stuff that I never expected to see again. We're adding to some of these continuities, usually in not great ways, but sometimes in pretty cool ways, and so it's hard not to get really excited about that, even knowing that a lot of that stuff probably wouldn't be on screen for very long, probably wouldn't be really well written, but it was enough to get me to go in the first place, and so it's a real catch-22, because on the one hand, I wish I didn't know about any of them, and on the other hand, if I hadn't known about a lot of them, I might not have been as compelled to watch, or as excited to watch. I was probably going to review this. I watched last year's crossover, so even though I haven't been keeping up with these shows, I've watched all of the crossovers, and this year, leading up to Crisis, I've been watching Arrow and Flash. I've done videos on both of those seasons so far, and they were good enough that it got me a lot more excited about this. I put up a Facebook post and said I was surprisingly stoked for Crisis just before it started. The first episode left me excited to see more, and the second episode was I was real down on. And then the third, it started to turn around a little bit again. This has been yo-yoing me around. I feel bipolar watching this miniseries. But anyway, going back to the cameos, or to the guest stars, a lot of, I was right about a lot of them, and some of them got surprisingly more screen time than I expected. I didn't think we would spend very much time in Smallville at all, and indeed, Tom Welling only gets about 5-7 minutes, but I thought it would be like the Burt Ward cameo at the beginning and of the miniseries, the first episode, and like Alexander Knox, and some of that stuff where you'd see him for a few seconds, and that would be it, where he would just look up at the sky and his universe was gone. And we don't do that. We actually do try to add to that universe. I will talk about Smallville later. I will probably spend more time talking about that than anything. As a lot of you guys know, I have a massive love-hate relationship with Smallville. I've done a series on Smallville for a long time, and I have things to say about that, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later. I was surprised that he was on screen as long as he was. It created a lot of problems, I think, for Smallville in general, what that adds, but we get a lot more Kevin Conroy than I thought. I thought he might also be one of those 40-second cameos, and I don't mind the 30-40-second cameos. I just wish I didn't know about them first. I know some people got, including myself, to be honest with you, got really excited that we were going to be crazy enough to put Alexander Knox in this thing, and he's in the first 2 minutes of the first episode, and his universe gets wiped out, Earth 89 right away. Same thing happens with Burt Ward, as in elderly Dick Grayson. His holy line is hilarious and wonderful and really well delivered. I loved everything about that. All of that stuff would have gotten me, and that was Earth 66. I love what we're doing with the years. We did that with Flash, with Earth 90, and so, I mean, some of that gets a little bit too hokey for me. Obviously, there's a lot of hokey in this continuity, and especially with Crisis, where it's having a hard time deciding just how serious it wants to be and just how cheeseball it wants to be, and it's going to be up to everybody to decide if some of those things are going too far for this material or not. Because sometimes we're really just looking at a cartoon made for adults, and sometimes we're working at some almost compelling television, and in the case of Flash, sometimes we're looking at some legitimately compelling television, and there are snippets of it in Arrow this season as well, but it's generally speaking, of course, not as sophisticated as and as intelligent as I would like it to be, and in a lot of places, including and especially in this crossover, it's just absolutely nonsensical and doesn't actually end up making any sense. And so, in a thing like that is so tonally all over the place, should I say it's going too far for Lucifer's universe, and I was surprised to see him here. I hadn't heard about that one, being Earth 666, just because he's in it? Okay, but whatever. Is that any sillier than some of the other stuff in this? So it gets really difficult to be very critical of some of this sometimes, but and to know where exactly to draw the line on that. It's not consistent, so it's very difficult for me to be consistent in my criticisms. After a while, it kind of just becomes somewhat taste issue. You get to a point where if it's clever enough and it's funny enough for you, then it's fine, and don't think about it too hard. And on the other hand, there are some story things where I absolutely cannot do that, and it just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, let me talk about some of those cameos. I expected Huntress from Birds of Prey to only get a couple of seconds of screen time. That happens. It was fun to see her again, but she does the same thing that we do in the first episode, where she just looks up and in the sky, and the sky's red, and then her universe goes. I don't know why her cameo wasn't in with the rest of them in the first episode, because it's the teaser for episode 3, and I'm not really sure why we did that, because it's the only one. Like, when we see her and she's talking to Oracle, and she's like, oh no, the world is ending, I really expected to see 2 or 3 or 4 more of those, and then we just cut to the Crisis logo, and I thought maybe each episode would open with some of those. So when the second one didn't, I was like, okay, so we're gonna see lots more guest stars and cameos and things, but we're not gonna keep opening episodes like this. And then we did it again with 3, and now that every world is destroyed, we won't have any more of those. So I don't know why we didn't just put them all together. Like, is there any reason that the Birds of Prey universe needs to be one of the last Earths that gets destroyed? Because shortly after that, we find out that there's only 7 left. So miraculously, the Birds of Prey universe, of all universes, stuck around longer than the majority of them. I have no idea how long the Smallville universe stuck around, because we didn't actually get to see it get destroyed, despite the fact that we spent more time there than we did some other places. But anyway, I thought that was kind of a weird decision. It felt kind of afterthoughty, almost like for some reason they couldn't get it in that first episode, so they had to shoehorn it in at the beginning of this one. I don't really know why we did that. Obviously, in a perfect world, what I would have liked to have seen would be a team of superheroes made up of a bunch of characters from different universes, and it's a little bit lame that we didn't do that, and I suspect the main reason is because these showrunners still want to focus on their main characters for the most part. So 4, I think, of the 7 Paragons have to be major characters that are already in the shows. Am I right about that? Flash is a Paragon. Obviously, this is a spoiler cast, so I'm dancing around. I'm talking about all of these different random things in this. So hopefully you've seen these as you're watching this. But and if you have, you know what I'm talking about with the Paragons. Each of these characters is supposed to be is supposed to represent a major part of a major positive part of the human condition. So Flash is one, Supergirl is one, Batwoman is one. We'll talk about that. And then who else? And then Brandon Routh's Superman is one. And the other major of our characters is Sarah Lance. Of course, Brandon Routh his Superman doesn't count as a main show character, of course, but he's an actor who's a major show actor, so obviously easy to get him and feature him a lot. And I suspect that's the reason that they were okay with him being getting as much screen time as he does. He's here a lot, actually, which I like, but it would be, and I'll talk about this a little bit later probably, but it would be obviously a little bit more novel and exciting if I hadn't seen him a bunch already on Legends, playing a different character, Legends and Arrow and Flash at all. And so I don't know, he's able to do that and there because they already have him in his stable and on the payroll, and that's the reason you get to see so much of this Superman. And they do some fun things with that, and there's some neat ideas there. I think we have to throw some other Supermen under the bus in order to do it, but anyway, that's why he gets to be one of the Paragons, and then the other two Paragons aren't major characters. And so it would have, like, even if they weren't Paragons, like, Black Lightning's not a Paragon, but he's coming in and looking more important than I expected him to, and he's not just a cameo. Of course, that's also because he has a TV show on the CW, so he actually has to be involved and featured more and not just pop in for a minute like Lucifer, who is the main character of a DC show, but not on this network. And I guess Lucifer's going to Netflix, I didn't realize that, but that I was legitimately surprised to see, actually. And I was looking at the Wikipedia page and seeing all the announcements that I had not looked at before, because at some point I finally just tried to shut off the stream of this because I didn't want to know any more than I already did, and I ended up knowing too much because, again, a lot of those guest stars and cameos just didn't get to surprise me, and I suspect I would have been more giddy and enjoyed this more despite some of the really crappy writing and weird performances and things if I had actually gotten to get surprised by those things. Because a lot of the point of this is fan service, and a lot of people have asked me, is this here just for fan service, and is the fan service obnoxious? And, like, it is, but it's so fun to get to see all of this stuff together that I really don't mind that if the story is, is kind of solid. Like, it doesn't have to be really complex and change hearts and minds and stuff. It just needs to not feel as much like it's plotted by a 6-year-old. And there's a lot of stuff in this that really feels that way, and I'll get to that in a minute. But this, by the way, is probably going to be even longer than the Arrow and Flash videos were, despite the fact that we're only talking about 3 episodes, just because there's a lot of small stuff that I really want to talk about and break down. But, there are eye-rolly lines of dialogue. The Constantine thing with Lucifer made me cringe a little bit. There's stupid stuff like that. But the actual, real comic fan service and fan service to other media is fun and doesn't get in the way, really, and I almost wish it was more of it, because where I get bored is with some of the regular TV show stuff. Especially, to be fair to these shows, the stuff that I haven't been watching, because I just don't care about it as much and I'm a little bit lost. I'm really glad, by the way, that I watched Flash and Arrow, because it got me more, the season, because it got me more acclimated, and I didn't have to play catch up with some of those major characters. Legends isn't even really talking about very much that happened in that show, and it's been off the air this season so far until we get to January. It's usually only like a half-season show, so I didn't have to worry about that, but all the Supergirl stuff I didn't know about. So, like, Brainy was a new character for me. I didn't know about him. He is over the top in the way that Heatwave was, where he just feels like a two-dimensional cartoon character, and he just cannot go too far for those directors in his theatrical voice, and it's really amusing. Heatwave, who also gets a cameo in this, and is still talking like that. I don't mean that they talk exactly the same. I just mean that they're as theatrical as the other. And Batwoman, I've seen the first 3 episodes, so I'm pretty familiar with what her status quo looks like, at least. But Supergirl was the big kind of blank spot for me, and so all of that, and also, I probably wouldn't have loved this even if I had been watching it, just because it's so melodramatic and it's taking up time that would be better served actually trying to, save the multiverse. Like, we have all these petty relationships and interpersonal conflicts because we're trying to continue to further the stories of these seasons, which I understand why we're doing that, because it's still part of these shows, and we don't want to just ignore the status quos, but at the same time, the entire multiverse is falling apart, and you've got Supergirl's sister arguing with Lena Luthor, and, like, I don't care about any of that. And I realize that the point of that is they need to put their differences aside and put their heads together so they can save the multiverse, like I'm talking about. But some of those scenes just kind of went on too long for me, and I was impatient because that wasn't what I was there for. And I'm just telling you the experience I had. That's not entirely fair. Folks that have been watching that show probably need some of that and wouldn't mind it as much, but some of it feels like filler, and even with shows that I'm watching, especially the Arrow stuff. So I guess I should go ahead and talk about some of the big major developments, and I'll keep going back and forth between that and some of the fan service stuff. So the big thing I really needed this crossover to do that I don't think at the end of the day it's going to be able to do, and I think that I'm maybe even unreasonable in saying this, but it's Crisis, man. At the end of this, it needs to be about simplifying the multiverse and putting one big world together where all of this is in one place. I don't know what the point of doing Crisis is if you don't do that. You're also, for the sake of fan service and because it's fun, making every DC thing pretty much that was ever on screen canonical. I mean, there are things that we're not seeing, but you have to kind of assume that they all probably are. I gotta be honest, I don't know why we're not doing Lois and Clark. I would have really appreciated some nod to that show, somebody from that popping in here, but alas, that didn't happen, despite the fact that Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher have both been in Supergirl. I don't know if they were approached. I don't know if they were asked. There are several actors who were approached that didn't come in for various reasons. Some of them just didn't want to, like Michael Rosenbaum, which is not surprising. And some just didn't have the time to be there. And that might have been the case with those two. I don't know. But it would have been really nice to get that in there. But anyway, so it's... You know, it would be crazy to expect Titans, for instance, from the from DC Universe to be part of this multiverse, and then or to be folded in as part of the new Earth One, because and it would be crazy to expect Lucifer to do that, etc. Because the shows that are still on would, and Black Lightning especially, you know, these shows that are still on would have to deal with the fact that their universe has been completely paved over and changed, and in their own shows they would probably have to deal with that. Maybe I'll get lucky and they'll actually be nuts enough to do that, and maybe some shows like Lucifer will be kind of easy to just keep rolling like nothing changed really, but that's not a world that looks like it's got superheroes in it. So I don't know how you do it, but it's Crisis. I mean, like, I don't want a big reset button hit at the end of this, and Guggenheim and the other show creators have said that at the end of this there are going to be major consequences, but it's not being made for the same reason the original Crisis was, so they've not come right out and said that it won't all be folded in together and that there will be a reset button hit and that every universe will come back, like Supergirl was trying to bring hers back. They haven't come straight out and said that, but it sure sounds like that's what they're hinting at when they're like, look, we're not making this for the same reason that Marvel Wolfman made Crisis back in 1985, because every major DC work from the 80s that you can think of happened in 85 or 86. That was a really important, 24 months of comics. But anyway, the reason that was made was because there were so many continuities, people couldn't keep up, they couldn't keep track of it, and the writers couldn't keep track of it anymore. There was so much inner crossover, it was really difficult to keep all the continuity straight, so they wanted to simplify it. And hilariously, Guggenheim or somebody on staff said, well, we don't have that problem, so that's not why we're making this. And I think they absolutely have that problem. If you go back and look at every major story beat in these shows, they don't all line up. They don't all fit together. There's a lot of retconning. There's a lot of stuff you shouldn't be able to come back from that you just ignore. Time travel nonsense, character inconsistencies, all kinds of things that if you went in and with a fine-tooth comb and you watched every single one of these shows, first of all, your brain would explode. But secondly, or you just wouldn't remember anymore how to do math or how to put sentences together. But if you did that and you somehow could keep your sanity, you know, if you did like a CW superhero Arrowverse Spawn year, you would find all of these inconsistencies, and you'd probably say, oh, I have to ignore major story beats in order to enjoy what's happening right now. And maybe a crisis would be in order to fix that and kind of just start over a little bit. Not entirely, and Crisis didn't start over entirely either. There were things that continued more or less the way they were. There were other things that were completely wiped out, but it was one Earth. And we've been doing so much multiverse stuff the last several years in the CW universe, it would be really nice to kind of get back to basics a little bit, and for us to go, okay, we're following this one universe because it's the only one that exists now, but we bring in some characters from some of the other universes and we integrate them, and then we make them major parts of our universe now. At the very least, I don't see how Crisis ends without at least the universes that are all currently set up in different TV shows that aren't part of the CW universe existing, or of the main CW universe existing. So there's no way this ends with Supergirl, with Earth 38 being roped in to the Arrowverse. I don't think. I really hope that happens, and I do really appreciate that Supergirl decided finally not to try to bring it back. We'll talk about that in a minute, because that second episode is awful, and then the third episode redeems some of that, I think. The second episode is mostly awful, I think. But anyway, so I don't see this ending without that Earth being brought back, and Lucifer's Earth being brought back, and Titans, and all of that stuff. And so it just feels really funky to even do Crisis if you're not doing it for the same reason, and then it ends up being there kind of just for fan service. So again, when people say is it just fan service, and is it fine that it's just fan service? I'm like, well, I don't mind that being the main motivation to do it, try to get all these cool things integrated together, but because so much of it is cameos, that doesn't seem to be the main reason it was done. So then, if the main reason it's done is to just have a big epic crossover, really make it count somehow at the end. And I don't know what exactly that looks like if you're not roping all the universes together at the end and making it one big universe. We have 2 episodes left. We have already destroyed the entire multiverse at the end of this. We only have the Paragons left and Lex, because in the Book of Destiny, he wrote his name instead of Brandon Routh's Superman, and he disappeared, and now you have Lex Luthor as one of the Paragons. I imagine because Lex Luthor was a major character in Crisis, and they were trying to work that in somehow. So we'll see what those last 2 episodes look like, because it's hard to imagine 2 whole episodes worth of story. And so what I'm really hoping happens is at the end of that 4th episode, we do indeed recreate the universe as one Earth, and then we spend the last episode exploring what that looks like. But I also think that that's wishful thinking. Again, I don't see how moving forward, some of those universes don't come back. I just hope we don't bring back the entire multiverse. I think that just really defeats a lot of the point of doing Crisis, and it also makes the stakes too big for how easy it will be to fix it, and that's always been a problem with this. And I'll talk about that'll be the next thing I talk about, how easy it is to bring back characters in this universe, and how that really messes with drama and makes it hard to get invested. But this is the biggest story you could possibly tell. The entire multiverse is at stake, and we destroyed it, and now we have to find some way to put it back together. But we are going to continue moving forward from that, and so we can never go that big again. So if you can never go that big again, it's really gotta count, because otherwise it just feels like another day at the office, and you spent all season with Arrow and Flash leading up to this like it was the biggest, most important thing that would ever happen. And you got all these people who never watch these shows to come in and watch this. You don't want it to just look like another day at the office. So that's my big reservation. Yesterday, that reservation for me was way higher than it is now, because I didn't trust this stuff to not immediately bring Oliver back and not immediately bring back Earth 38. It was really irritating watching all the filler in the second episode with Supergirl trying to figure out how she was going to try to bring back her Earth. We also spent too long with her focused on her own planet without any discussion at all about all the other planets that were disintegrating. So once you get into episode 3, and she starts finally saying, well, I need the Book of Destiny, I need the Book of Destiny, or whatever it's called in this, to bring back all of the Earths that were destroyed. It's better because she seemed really super selfish and really singularly minded, and I get that losing your whole planet, that could maybe happen to you, but she didn't seem like she lost her mind. She didn't seem like out of touch and like crazy, like obsessed, and some of that's maybe just Benoist acting, but like she just seemed like this is what you do in a situation like this. I lost my Earth. It was kind of too systematic. Like, lost my Earth, I gotta go get it back. Okay, but what about all those other Earths that have disappeared? And if yours wasn't one of them, would you be working this hard at trying to bring them back from the brink? But at least she starts talking about the other ones before Batwoman pulls out or thinks about pulling out the kryptonite that she got from Kevin Conroy's evil Batman to try to fight her. And so, I don't know, we redeemed a lot of that nonsense from the second episode, but we also wasted too much time on it. So, in order to shock the audience, and it really does feel like just a plot twist to shock the audience, Oliver is killed off in the first episode, because we've known since last year's crossover, since Elseworlds, that Oliver was supposed to die in Crisis. And this whole season we've been talking about how both he and Flash are not supposed to make it out alive in Crisis. And Guggenheim, again, or one of the producers in an interview I read said, well, everybody thought that he was probably going to die in the last episode, that he would have like, a big epic finale, going out. And we thought, what if we went ahead and killed him off right away? Which I think is a great idea. Go ahead and just take him out now, and then it feels like such a bigger deal, because I knew he was going to die, but I didn't think it would happen that early. So yeah, it is a big surprise, but then our characters have to, Sarah and some of the other cast of Arrow have to waste a bunch of time going and trying to bring him back from the dead. And I'm like, because this is a universe where it's too easy to bring back people from the dead. And if they stay dead, it's because the actor is out of contract or doesn't want to come back. It's not because we've got actual good dramatic storytelling with people dying. That when a person dies, they stay dead. No, not in this universe. Everybody comes back until the shows decide they shouldn't. And so I do really appreciate that in episode 3 they get all the way to Purgatory, which of course has to look like Lian Yu, and they meet the Spectre, and the Spectre says, no, Oliver's not, he's going to cross over, and he's not going back with you. And I really like that we do that. On the other hand, I know that he has more episodes left in his season and that he's supposed to be in the finale, so I don't know how exactly that's going to work, but I want to assume that he's not coming back to life. Now, if we just, at the end of this, hit a reset button, and everybody who has died through this, along with all of the Earths, comes back at the end, that's going to suck, because it will make this whole thing a big, giant waste of time. I hope that's not happening. And, like, again, I can't really imagine how you stick the landing without keeping all those Earths gone, but I kind of had the same thing with Endgame, and I know a lot of people don't like how they handled this and do feel like it was too much of a cop-out at the end, but I appreciate that there were consequences with that, at least to the point where there were 5 whole years where half of the universe was gone, and the people that are left alive have to deal with that and remember it when everybody comes back. So yes, we do hit a reset button in that, in the sense that all those people are able to come back, but everybody's moved on without them, and then they show up again, which is an inherently interesting dramatic situation. We've not yet done enough with it, and I'm kind of concerned that the MCU will never play with that enough, but it wasn't just a stuff that never happened episode. It wasn't just we do some fancy time travel and then we reset everything, and the whole point of this was just the novelty of getting to see a horrible alternate future, but it didn't actually stick. Stuff from that did stick. So I'm curious to see how this attempts that, because I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to try to have major enough consequences moving forward that it will shake the foundation of the CW universe, but that it won't go as far as I wish it would. It has to do more than CW's stupid Flashpoint did. It has to be more than just wiping out little things like Iris and Barry's first kiss and changing Diggle's child from female to male. It has to do more than that, or I think a lot of people are never going to come back. But you know, considering how many people left these shows and got really fed up with them like I did, it is pretty impressive that they brought so many people back for this. But they also did it again in a somewhat gimmicky way. They got a lot of people to come in for cameos that they pretended like would be a bigger deal, would matter more in the episodes than they do. But again, there are things that stuck more than I expected them to. So yeah, pretty much everything in that second episode, with the exception of some of what we do with Brandon Routh's Superman, is awful. Like, I don't like that we bring in Brandon Routh's Superman and immediately it's so that he can be mind-controlled and fight the Tyler Hoechlin Superman. Because, of course, that's what we did. Of course, we have to have a big Superman versus Superman fight. That would have been cooler if we had done maybe an evil Superman. I'm glad we didn't do that on top of an evil Batman, and I know a lot of people are excited that this actually turned out to really be the Superman Returns Superman. I don't think anybody expected that, because he's wearing the Kingdom Come suit, and we knew that from all the advertising, and I think a lot of people expected that he would be playing a completely different Superman, but it actually is the Christopher Reeve / Brandon Routh Superman, which is weird because in my head those are absolutely two different things, and Superman Returns was a soft reboot of the Christopher Reeve stuff, and it doesn't actually count as being in that universe because it can't, because it doesn't fit, it doesn't make sense. But whatever, that's what they've decided it is, and that movie was having its cake and eating it too, and so I can't argue with it too much, but it breaks my brain, and it's so weird. Even weirder, so it is kind of fun. I mean, I do like this idea, and we're not creative enough with some of the stuff we're doing in this, so this is legitimately creative and imaginative, and I really like it. That you're basically saying the Christopher Reeve Superman is so pure of heart, and that he cares so much about people that he could lose everyone in his life and still be that guy. And it takes a toll on him, of course, and that's the reason that he's wearing the black in his Superman suit. He's got almost like a Johnny Cash thing going on with that, which I really like. I like the explanation that this particular Superman, that's why he has the black in his suit, but he continues to endure. And that's great. I like that idea a lot. It's really neat that you basically have Christopher Reeve, Brandon Routh Superman transforming into Kingdom Come Superman, and it's not even really Kingdom Come because he didn't give up. He didn't go off on a farm like Smallville Clark did, and we'll talk about that in a minute. He's wearing that same suit, and he's older, and I think it's funny that he's got gray in his hair now because I don't know. I don't know timeline-wise when exactly that stuff is supposed to happen because the Christopher Reeve universe is very clearly set in the 70s and then into the 80s, and then it's really ambiguous about time period once you get to Superman Returns, which is one of the many, many reasons I cannot think of it as canonical with the rest of those movies. And then, but this squarely says that it all is, because he is referencing other things that happen in that universe. Interestingly, that movie seems to kind of throw out everything except for 1 and 2, and then this has a reference to 3 with the fight with himself, and I kind of like that line. So yeah, it's saying that all of that happened with this particular version. But anyway, he doesn't straight up become Kingdom Come Superman. They kind of repurpose that suit. And it's a really nice repurposing. I like that idea a lot. But yeah, I don't really understand the gray hair because I'm not sure why he's that much older. But if the idea, because they're trying to be consistent with these time periods moving in real time, which I actually really like. So that actors can play their characters again without us pretending like they're not so much older than they were. So Earth 66 is just that many years after that show. It's 50 plus years after that, and Burt Ward's Robin is, or Dick Grayson is just, an old man now. And so I think the idea is maybe supposed to be, this is the best I can figure, but Superman Returns makes this complicated, is that this is a Superman that's been operating since 78. And if that's the case, and he's a Superman that actually ages, then yes, he should have gray in his hair. But the Superman from Superman Returns wouldn't have gray in his hair because Brandon Routh was really young at that point, and moreover, we've been seeing him play the Atom, and that guy doesn't have gray in his hair. So anyway, that's not important, but I thought it was amusing to bring up. Also amusing to bring up, this is a very odd irony, is that we bring back the Superman Returns Superman, and he's not wearing his original costume. He's got this really awesome Kingdom Come suit, and I cannot over-exaggerate how great that suit is. I thought it would look awesome in the pictures we got of it before this, and it looks great in context. It's awesome. And in Smallville, in the last episode, when Clark finally puts on his costume, importantly not Tom Welling, but Clark, it is, they don't want to spend the money on making a new suit, so they use the Superman Returns suit. So, which is just really jarring and always bugged me. And then when we finally bring in the Superman Returns Superman, we're not using the Superman Returns suit, even though we did bring it back for the end of Smallville. I think that's really funny. So, Brandon Routh does a really good job in this. I don't know that his performance is all that different from what he's doing with the Atom, but he wanted to play the Atom as another really altruistic Superman or superhero, and he used it as kind of a chance to get to do that again, but with, more of a brainy, nerdy guy. And that one scene where we introduce him and we see all the people who have died in his life, there is some pathos there. He is excellent in that scene, and I'm really impressed with that. So this is nothing against him. I just wish he hadn't been playing the Atom this entire time, because it loses some weight, I think, when we get him in the same room with the Atom, and that he's obviously here and gets as much screen time as he does because he was just here already and able to do that. Let's talk about Smallville, shall we? Last season, with that big cliffhanger, we felt the need to give Smallville the show a cameo without any actors, having no idea that we were actually going to get Tom Welling this year. Obviously, we wouldn't have done that if we knew that we were A, going to get Tom Welling, and B, go back to the farm. So it's going to be really weird if you ever go back and watch Elseworlds again, because we go to the farm from Smallville, the same farm they shoot in Vancouver, and we make a big deal out of the farm being a Smallville cameo by playing Somebody Save Me behind it when we arrive there, but it's not in a different universe if memory serves. It's just, I think it was just supposed to be the farm that Clark from Earth 38 grew up on, if memory serves. I might be wrong about that, but it's not the Smallville farm, certainly. Whatever universe it's in, it's not Smallville. So when we come here, we're not using Somebody Save Me again, because we did that already, and I don't mind that, of course, but could we have maybe put Clark in a different location and not had him on the farm, since we gave the farm a cameo last season? Couldn't we have put him anywhere else? Well, no cap, we couldn't have put him anywhere else, because the whole point of him being here is that he gave up his powers and is no longer being Superman, unlike Brandon Routh's really altruistic, will never let anything get in his way of being Superman. Why are we throwing all these other Supermen under the bus in order to make Superman Returns Kingdom Come Superman look like such a great righteous character? I mean, I guess it's the reason he's a paragon and the other two aren't, but like, Tyler Hoechlin Superman, who gets really buried in this, by the way. Like, he does not have the screen presence and the gravitas he's had in the past, just because he's surrounded by so many other heroes, and there is a Superman who seems more larger than life than him standing right next to him, and Brandon Routh absolutely has that, standing right next to Tyler Hoechlin Superman, and that's nothing against that actor, and I like him a lot, and I'm still really hoping he gets a TV show. There's been rumors about that lately. I hope that happens. But especially since I'm jumping all over the place, but especially since now we've got Doomsday name dropped in Earth 38. Lois mentions him in a big long list of things that he's dealt with because we have to do the stupid diaper changing scene at the beginning, because of course we have to do that. And he's on Argo, and they've had a kid because he doesn't have powers anymore, so now he can have children. And he and Lois goes down this big list of threats he's faced, but he's got to face a diaper. Hilarious. And he and I always wanted to see Supergirl do a season that was Death of Superman, where Supergirl has to fill the big shoes more than she has already, because Superman is actually completely out of the picture, and you just dramatize Death of Superman with Tyler Hoechlin's Superman, or even use that as a way to write him out before they finally cast Superman. We didn't think they would ever cast him, so that you got a good reason that he's not there. And now we've name dropped Doomsday, so apparently that's happened already, or if it hasn't, he's faced Doomsday. So whatever. So at this point, I really hope that he actually gets a TV show, because there's no cool way to kill him off now, because we can't adapt to Death of Superman. Or if we do, he's met Doomsday already, and that somewhat defeats the point. But whatever. So, and since I'm on Death of Superman, I should also mention, because I know a lot of people are going to want me to weigh in on this, that we do go to a universe where Superman has just died because Superman and Lois from Earth 38 are going all over trying to stop Lex Luthor from killing Superman. And they get to an Earth where they're too late, where Superman has died, and you see Lois on the screen with the famous gatefold panels where she's holding Superman and his cape is shattered and fluttering on the pole in the distance, and it looks awful. It's shot on a stage and it's not lit right, and it looks really bad. Somebody pointed out to me, and I hadn't, or said this, I haven't gone back and looked at it, but I'm assuming they're right about it, that Superman in that, it's like they threw this together so fast, they weren't even thinking about it. The cape is on a pole waving, but the Superman she's holding is also wearing a cape. Is that true? Because that's just moronic. Like, how do you do that? How can you be that careless, show? Man, I'm like 40 minutes in, and I still have so much stuff to talk about. So, sorry about the very long video, but I want to get to all this. So, Clark in Smallville has given up his power somehow. We're not told how. And he's acting kind of sanctimonious. Like, I don't have to be Superman anymore. I did all that stuff. That's behind me. And I don't want anything to do with that stuff anymore. And he's, I guess, consistent with that character a lot in that show, because he's really selfish and unlikable, like he often was. And I know some Smallville fans are really happy with what they did in this. I don't understand that. I think it continues to help ruin that show, but I mean, they did a good enough job of that already with that finale, so I mean, there's not too much more damage they could have done. Like, again, this is weirdly consistent. I hope somehow or rather he ends up showing up again in the last couple episodes. I don't think that's going to happen, but I really wish we could fix this, and it turn out that the show agrees with me that he's being kind of selfish and that he needs to come back and be Superman again. In his universe, if he had, sort of like Hulk when Superman did, set up someone else to be a hero and thought he was covered and just wanted to go live a life now, I could be made to appreciate that, but this is all done in 5 minutes. We don't get like a Smallville episode, of course, about this, and so all I've got to go on is he's not Superman anymore, and he's put his powers away. And what's worse than that is when he's told that the multiverse is ending, he just laughs it off and walks inside the farmhouse with his wife. Like, Lex shows up. This is all so, like insane and unintentionally funny. Lex shows up and tries to get Clark with kryptonite. He's trying to kill all the Supermen across the universes. And some of the stuff Tom Welling does with this is fun. I feel like overall he maybe doesn't actually want to be there, but he's got a couple of lines that I chuckled at. But anyway, like, I don't hate everything about this, but I hate most everything about this. Lex shows up, and he pulls out kryptonite, and Clark just looks at it, and then he punches him in the face. And I did like, I'm still stronger. That was fun. And it turns out that, again, he doesn't have his powers anymore. He doesn't want them. He gave them up somehow. Pretty easy to do in that universe. He loses his powers all the time. And so Lex comically decides not to kill him because he's not a threat. He's like, oh, you're not actually Superman now because you don't have powers, so whatever, bye. and he leaves, and when Clark tells Lois that all these universes are allegedly falling apart, she has this really cringy line where she says, "You made a funny, Smallville!" And then Clark's like, "Yeah," and then they just like walk back into the farmhouse. And they're dead now, and they deserve to be. Clark should have looked into it, right? And figured out a way to get his powers back. Maybe go into the cave and be like, "Hey, Jor-El, I need my powers back!" And then Jor-El's like, "I'm no longer around anymore because I got retconned out of this continuity in place of a more altruistic version of myself." And then Clark's like, "Oh, that's right, I'll go to the Fortress of Solitude." Because I don't think the cave actually is even there anymore, or got buried, or so I can't remember what happened with that. And then, I don't know, he goes to the fortress, and then he gets his powers back somehow. But I don't know, he should have done something, he should have looked into it, right? So, I don't know. He's thrown way under the bus, but at the same time is also somewhat consistently characterized with the worst of that show. I also didn't understand some of the newspaper articles about Superman that we see there. Like, Lois has known him for years and wrote and still writes "I spent the night with Superman." Okay, so like, because, I don't know, it's almost like it's eerily accurate to everything I didn't like about that show, and I know Smallville writers came in and wrote that scene. That was the mistake we made, is that we let people that wrote that show write that scene. That show was constantly, of course, referencing other versions of Superman and foreshadowing stuff. And so this is doing exactly the same thing. So it goes, in the same episode where we're getting Brandon Routh / Christopher Reeve Superman, we're also doing a reference to that universe in Smallville as if that's not in the same show and in the exact same episode where we did that. Okay. Would it have been fun if Tom Welling's Clark could have met another Superman? Especially since he was wearing Brandon Routh's suit? Wouldn't that have been nice? I don't know. It's again, that's where we're not being especially creative. Again, I'm glad that he's not on screen for only 40 seconds, but at the same time, if he was, then we wouldn't be further ruining that show. So, whatever. Again, the damage was already pretty well done. Let's talk a little bit about Evil Batman, shall we? Kevin Conroy comes in, he gets a sizable amount to do, and he plays the most horrifying, least likable Batman since All-Star Batman by Frank Miller. And a lot of people online I've seen say, and in our Patreon Facebook group, say that, he's playing like a really scary, evil Frank Miller Batman. He's doing a Kingdom Come Batman that goes even farther, I think, than Kingdom Come Batman did. Like, he's totalitarian, and he's like running the streets of Gotham with drones, and that's where the idea of the skeletal suit that keeps him together so that he's able to survive and not fall apart comes from. But I don't think that he was like a mass murderer the way he is in this, because this Batman kills everybody. Kills the Joker, kills Superman, kills everybody. And I don't know, I kind of just wish it was better written. Like, I'm of two minds about it. Because on the one hand, Conroy seems like kind of the right guy to play like really broken, messed up, totally lost himself Batman. It's kind of unfortunate that at the end we don't redeem him in some way. He just is the bad guy and we've got to put him down. But I don't think I mind the fact that he's playing a villainous Batman, but at the same time it being the first and probably only time Conroy will ever play that on screen. I'm sure a lot of fans are really disappointed that he played a bad guy Batman, and that it probably looks, pretty cynical to people. And so, casting-wise, like just as far as what that actor does well and what he looks like and everything, that's kind of a cool Batman for him to play, I guess. But it being a big reunion thing for all these different universes, yeah, it would have been nice if we'd done something more like we did with Routh, where like there's so much love and reverence for those Superman movies. Even Returns And that, by the way, does not seem like the Superman that is as altruistic as they think he is, given how, really kind of self-serving he seems to be in that movie, and the whole peeping Tom thing and all of that. They're ignoring that. That's, I guess, fine, although his son Jason is mentioned. But I don't know, it's surreal that we're even talking about some of this stuff. I mean, again, it's not, a lot of it's not good, but it's also kind of neat all at the same time. So it was a fun novelty to get to see him play that at the Conroy. At the same time, it's pretty clear to me that Conroy knows just how cheesy and poorly written this material is, because he really cheeseballs it up. He is pretty over the top and pretty silly, and he just doesn't have great material to work with. I think the same thing happens with John Wesley Shipp a lot when he's in the sappier, cornier scenes, where specifically playing Barry Allen's dad, and I'm talking about in The Flash, not in these episodes, because when he's playing 90s Flash here, those scenes are better written, and and I should mention too that each episode the quality of it seems to be determined by what show it's in, because they're using, I think for the most part, those writing staffs. So I really thought that episode to episode it would just feel like the next chapter of a thing, and it wouldn't really feel like each of those TV shows, but it does. So like the first episode is Supergirl, and it's focusing more on that cast than everybody else, and it's written like a Supergirl episode. So it's pretty middle of the road. And then the Batwoman episode is the awful one, and mostly focuses on Batwoman. And I'll talk some more about the awfulness of that here in a second. And then the third episode is in Flash, and focusing mostly on Flash, and even though I have big story issues with it, it's the best episode so far, I think, because it's in that show, and that show has been the smartest, at least of the stuff I've seen this season, so far. So anyway, like I said, John Wesley Shipp gives different performances depending on what kind of material he's given. So sometimes he really hams it up because that's the material. And so I'm like, that's a really bad performance. And then he'll come in and he'll play something better, like some of the stuff he got with Jay Garrick at the beginning of the season. I'm like, oh, that's right, John Wesley Shipp can actually act. He's not lost it. And I know I'm jumping around, I just loved the way he went out as 90s Flash in this. It doesn't actually ultimately make sense as far as what was set up in Flash, and I'll mention why in a second, but I loved the performance so much. He's doing this very nuanced, very different performance when he's in the 90s Flash suit. It's like when he puts that on, he goes back to 30 years ago and he remembers exactly how he played that. And I think that's so cool. I think a lot of that third episode does really classy things. I thought it was so classy, and such a nice nod to the history of all of this and how John Wesley Shipp kind of helped start all of this, that he's the Flash that ends up making the big sacrifice and really dies so that Barry doesn't have to. So here's why it doesn't actually make sense. I love it, don't get me wrong, but the problem is actually in Flash, and somebody again, our Patreon Facebook group suggested this to me, and I said, well, no, this can't be what it is, and this is what they've done, but it doesn't make sense. It's not what they should have done. So this guy, I forget who it was, was spot on about this, but somebody said to me, well, Cap, the Monitor didn't say which Flash had to die. He just said the Flash had to die so that to save the multiverse. And I was like, yeah, but Barry sent his mind into the future and saw all the different permutations, and the only one where everybody else survived was the one where he, not a person in a Flash suit, but he disintegrated. Because they show it to us, and it's him. It's not arbitrary. It's not, or ambiguous, rather. He should be able to tell the difference between a 55-year-old man in a Flash suit that doesn't look like his suit and himself in his suit. It doesn't make sense, but that's what we did. So all they had to do was not show us that, and it would have worked fine. It's also a really silly, cryptic loophole. It's like, why did the Monitor do that? Was it important somehow to save the multiverse or whatever, that Barry thinks that he's the one who's going to actually have to die? Was there a reason for the greater good that Barry had to think that whole season that he was basically a dead man walking? Or I think one of the episodes is called Dead Man Running, which is kind of a fun episode title. Why did he have to do that? I think it was just for the sake of drama, so that we could just explore mortality that season, just all the thematic stuff with the idea that he has essentially a critical condition. Okay, so just like I was afraid of, all of that was kind of pointless now. And, I mean, I knew he wasn't gonna die, but I didn't know that it would end up not actually making any sense at all. You know what else doesn't make sense? Let's go back to the crappy episode. We didn't need to see elderly, evil Bruce Wayne at all. Like, that was a complete wasted subplot. It was padding. It was totally pointless. Like, if you're gonna do a completely pointless subplot just to get Kevin Conroy in there, maybe don't make him, like, the evil, scary Batman and give people the real fan service they were craving. And maybe, like I said, unless he just couldn't be there, like I said in the live show the other day, get Mark Hamill in there as the Joker, because Mark Hamill has been in these shows as the trickster. How do we not have Hamill and Conroy on screen together? And you might say, well, Cap, it's because that's not the story they wanted to tell. They're not telling any story. What they end up doing is they say, okay, we have these very convenient clues as to who some of the Paragons are. And one of them is Bat of the Future, and that's the Paragon of Courage. And the whole reason that Batwoman had to go there was so that she could find out that she was the Paragon of Courage. And that's already sappy and lame and dumb. And I don't like her being the Paragon of Courage, and I don't like her being Bat of the Future, because she's not. She's Bat of the present. She's already a Bat, so it's already dumb. But then she comes back to the Wave Rider, and Palmer has put together his Paragon detector. Don't know how that technology makes any sense, but whatever. He's got that now, which it conveniently breaks down so that we can wonder who the last three are going to be. And then one of them turns out to just be a civilian that in the comics is, I think, the third Atom. And what is that show? Like, nobody's favorite Atom. So I don't know if we're like writing Palmer out and he's going to take his place at some point, or what exactly we're doing with that. But anyway, Paragon of Humanity, he has to be a civilian, but he's actually also eventually going to be a superhero. And if you don't know about that, you didn't look it up, that's the reason that he's obsessed with Palmer, because he's supposed to also be the Atom at some point. So Batwoman's on the Wave Rider, and Palmer is like, oh, I got my thing to work, and you're the Paragon of Courage. You're Bat of the Future. It's like, okay. Their going on that mission had nothing to do with his getting his technology perfected. Like, they didn't bring back an element for it. They didn't do anything. I don't think. I'm pretty sure it conveniently is working by the time they get back. So what was it? Am I missing something? What was it about their going to Earth 99 that got that made her realize that she was the Paragon? Because what made her realize it was being scanned by a Paragon tricorder. That's what did it. Wow, that's really stupid. So that with the Barry thinking that he was supposed to die, but he actually just forgot what his costume looked like and that he wasn't in Old Man in a Flash costume, are the two dumbest things that have happened so far. There are other dumb things. Those are the big dumb things that I wanted to bring up and mention. I also, of course, just don't like the Monitor. I don't like all of the cryptic stuff. Just like I suspected so far, it has not all lined up and panned out. He seems to just tell people whatever the script wants them to know in the moment to create drama right now, and it's supposed to be you know stuff that we can't wrap our heads around because he can see 10 steps ahead, and so he's doing whatever needs to be done in the moment to get us there. It seems like overly simple in a lot of places where he's acting like it's all really super complicated, but then he'll go to somebody and be like, you are of pivotal importance to stopping this crisis. and then like 5 minutes later they do the thing that was really important for them to do. So like he doesn't really seem like a master manipulator so much as just flying by the seat of his pants, just like the scripts are. So he'll just in the moment be like, yeah, you, that guy, you're important. See, look, now you're doing an important thing. I told you. There's like no lead up to it at all. I don't know how his cosmic sight works exactly, because I don't think it does. I don't think these writers have given that any thought at all. Because, like, is he... We're told in the first episode that Oliver died before he was supposed to, and so it's supposed to be a big deal. Like, oh no, things are not working out the way the Monitor expected that they would, which at that point means that anything could happen. So nothing he's told us that absolutely has to happen should matter anymore. The Monitor should honestly kind of not factor in at all and be totally written out at that point, written off at that point, because if he wasn't right about that, how can we be sure that he's right about the Flash having to die in order to save the universe, like in order to save the multiverse? That is ultimately what ends up happening. But once he's like, things are unfolding differently than I thought, everyone there should be like, you have no credibility at all anymore, dude. But they don't do that. They keep kind of trusting him, or at least thinking there must be truth to things he's saying. We don't know how to write that stuff at all in this. And I realize the original Crisis is also really convoluted, but this is a lot worse than that. And the big threat just does not feel as like ominous and looming as they want it to, because we don't get to see it very much. The Anti-Monitor, we get a glimpse of at the end of the second episode, and that look is apparently based on an appearance he has in New 52, which I never saw, so I was wondering about that, and I was like, why can't he be like a big, scary... why can't he have like that big scary face and where he's got like the cosmos behind his mouth where it looks like he's eating cookies? Why can't we do that? Because that was always really cool. They're not afraid of crappy CG in this. Just look at the scene with the two Supermans fighting. Like, I'm not going to cry foul on that too hard, because I understand that it's a TV budget, and yeah, if they'd had more time, maybe that could have looked better. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that, like, they don't mind putting stuff that looks like that on TV. So why can't they, like, they've done a lot of CG creatures. They've got King Shark, and they've got the Gorilla Grodd. Like, why can't they have a big CG? I can't believe I'm asking for a CG Anti-Monitor, but I kind of am, because he's just the Monitor, but with the exact same voice, but just with, like, you know, creepy prosthetics. Okay. And then we don't even get creepy prosthetic Monitor in the third episode, because he's possessing Lila and just speaking through her. I think I'm going to call it a day right now. If there's anything I didn't hit, I know there's going to be stuff that people wanted me to mention that I forgot about. Let me know in the comments, and I'll talk about it in the next video when we get to the fourth and fifth part in January. So that airs, I think, January 15th, and I will do a video shortly thereafter. And anything I didn't get to in this that that you'd like to hear me talk about, just leave those in the comments. Thanks a lot, everybody, for watching. Sure appreciate it. Let me know what you think of Crisis so far. Are you absolutely hating it? Do you think I'm being too hard on it? Do you think that the fan service makes up for any of the inconsistencies? Do you think that the logical fallacies and things don't matter because it's this universe, so like of course it has that stuff? Does the inconsistent quality bother anybody else? Is anybody else having exactly what I am, where like the first episode was okay, the second episode was awful, and then the third was a lot better? Let me know what your experience has been with this. I suspect a lot of people are going to have different experiences, especially depending on whatever DC things you are most interested in and what brought you to this in the first place. Are you still excited? Is anybody dropping off? Has anybody watched these and said, yeah, no, I'm done? Let me know. Leave the comments, and I'm excited to read them. And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan, and I'll see you again next time, and lots more videos coming your way soon on Geekvolution. Bye, everybody.